Okay everybody, welcome to my garage. Here we have a 1973 Chevrolet Camaro. My wife and I bought this about a month after we moved here to New Jersey. We decided to go out and buy ourselves this project car. We saw this car at a car show initially. The reason why I was interested in it was because this car was a roller, had no motor in it. And I had just bought a big block 454 with a turbo 400 transmission the week prior. This motor is a good running motor out of a truck, standard deck, 454, peanut heads.
Peanut heads?
Yes, peanut port heads. It's in relation to the intake port on the head. That's why we decided to pick this up. We went and spoke to the guy. He really wanted to sell it as a pair. 73, which is this one, along with a 1972 Camaro that was in much worse condition, but it had a motor and transmission. He talked us into buying both. The reason why we decided to go with this engine is because this engine was more put together, meaning it already had a aluminum intake, alternator, a water pump, harmonic bouncer, everything that we needed to get it running. So we spent the week and we went to New York. We bolted on the pulleys, the belts, alternator. We went through and drained the oil that was in there, and that was an issue. We found a lot of water. I would say about half of a gallon of water came out of the oil pan. So that was pretty scary. What we did then was we filled it up with oil, a zinc additive, and then we primered it, which is where you stick a shaft down the distributor hole and you turn it with the drill, and that pumps up oil into all the lifters. So we got it really pre-lubricated, and then we had an extra carburetor laying around that we stuck on. It's a Holley 370 CFM, I believe. We put that carburetor on and we fired it up and we were able to get it running. And the motor runs pretty well. It came with headers and the turbo 400, like I said, that's behind it. What happened then? We pulled the motor and transmission out of the 1972 Camaro. We put it in my truck. We drove all the way back to New Jersey. We took this car and we pushed it out of the driveway and put it across the street in a parking spot. Then what we did was we backed my truck up to the garage. We lifted up the engine transmission out of the pickup truck. We pushed the 1973 Camaro back in the garage right underneath the engine and transmission. We lowered it down and bolted it all in. I know there's going to be a lot of people right now wondering, why would you put the 350 in when you have a good running 454 sitting right here on the side? The reason we did that, this motor was more put together, and also I don't really care about this motor. I just want to get this car running and driving on the street legal by springtime. I would love to drive this car around spring and summer, go to some car shows and just enjoy it. In the meantime, this engine is going to go on the engine stand and we want to build it up to put it in here correctly the first time. So this motor is just here to get us by for now. So the whole purpose of this build is to get it as cheap as possible. We bought the two Camaros for $5,600. That's a steal because you got a running engine and you got a running transmission, drive shaft, headers, and some interior parts from the other car we'll get into later. Some of the money-saving techniques that we use are we scour Craigslist and Facebook Marketplace day in and day out. For instance, I bought a whole box of parts. Most of the ones that are up there, extra set of tail lights, depth bezel, some my miscellaneous brackets, an extra front bumper and rear bumper, and importantly, the reason why I bought all these parts is because I needed the heater stuff. This car is originally non-AC car, and I'm going to keep it that way. This car is for heat only. The one thing that's really cool about this car is that it was the base model. I really like the base model cars because these are the ones that hot rodders would grab. They would get these cars and then they would drop in the V8, the transmission of their choice, they would upgrade the rear end, and then they would have a really cool custom car. The reason being is now they can make a car the way they want it. not the way the dealership wants it. So when you get a Z28, all original, you know, Survivor, let's say, you can't just drop in the 454 big block that is not numbers matching. Some people just aren't happy with that. It's kind of like a moral thing where you want to keep the car original. Versus we have a 6-cylinder, it doesn't matter. You pull the 6-cylinder out, drop the V8 in, and go and have fun. That's the purpose of this build. Some of the things that we have done so far, when I said before how we got that bin full of heater parts, there was no heater here. And so we got the outside shroud. It has a brand new heater core on the inside, and on the other side of the dash is the whole control unit that runs over. We got that thrown in there. That whole box of parts with the bumpers and the extra taillights and everything I was saying up there, we got that whole thing for $100. And all I did for was this heater stuff, and it was well worth it. Next thing I did was I had to find a place to mount my MSD box. I wanted it to look as neat as possible. So we have it mounted right above the heater box. Coil we mounted next to it. We routed, these are do-it-yourself spark plug wires. The point of these is you cut them all to length. So I tried to do the best I could with trying to keep it as neat as possible. The next thing is the brakes. This car, as I said, came as a roller, so it had 0 brakes. We had to buy the booster, the master cylinder, the proportioning valve, and all brake lines. These are not 100% hooked up yet, but we had to buy all of this, which we bought from various websites using various coupons and credits that we previously had to try to get it as cheap as possible. Right back down here, we were missing the drums. As you can tell, this one's brand new. The drums online, when I was finding them, it was about $50 for one, and we needed 2. Or I found a kit online where I could buy 2 drums and shoes and all the springs I needed for, I think it was $120. So for an extra $20, I figured, you know what, let's just do it all brand new. Just because it's a budget build, sometimes you're going to want to spend a little bit extra money on things that matter. The only thing then, I went out and I spent the extra money to go and buy wheel cylinders. Which the wheel cylinders, I was able to get a good coupon, and I had a $10 credit from Advanced Auto Parts. So I was able to get both wheel cylinders for $12. As you can tell, this is the old brake line, this is the new brake line. There's 2 of them. One of these, I believe, was a fuel return line. What stopped me was these clips. They're double wide, so the clip held on the 2 lines and it's secured to the frame rail. It's too large for a single hose, so I gotta get new ones in the mail. But this is the other thing about spending the extra money is this brake line is pretty identical in all the bends, so it'll make installation super easy. I just want to wait until I get the proper clips in the mail. You can come back and see us on the next video where we're going to get more in depth on the brakes as a whole, meaning the front, getting the line hooked up to the rear, and getting all the hoses secured properly.